Welcome to the Leo Training Podcast with Joe DeLeo. You'll hear in-depth interviews and tips from world-class athletes, coaches, and industry-leading experts to help you train smarter and improve at what you love to do. Train smarter, get stronger, move better, race faster. Here's your host, Joe DeLeo.
On this week's episode, I get to sit down with my two friends, Kylie and Erin McKenzie, and we are very pleased to announce and share an upcoming workshop that will be taking place later this summer in El Segundo, California. The workshop is called Get Connected, and it is focused and targeted on youth rowers. And in this workshop, we'll cover 3 pillars of training, and those are mindset, performance, and skill. I hope you enjoy our discussion, and please consider checking out the workshop details. There will be a link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the show. I am thrilled to have on 2 of my close friends, Kylie Tullipin and Erin McKenzie. And this afternoon, we're going to discuss an upcoming workshop that will be held later this summer in sunny California. And this workshop will be geared towards junior rowers, and we will be discussing 3 pillars or key areas of training in mindset, performance, and skill. So Erin, Kylie, thanks so much for coming on and doing a little quick chat with myself this afternoon and talking about the upcoming workshop.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
It's morning here.
Yeah, there we go. I love it.
I was going to say, yeah, it is morning here.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's kind of kick things off, and I think, why don't we start with Erin, and Erin, why don't you discuss how strength and conditioning during your rowing career helped not only performance, but health, injury prevention, and we can kind of build from there.
Sure. I'll give you the quick and dirty version. So I chose a sport that I was completely undersized for. So I chose rowing, and I don't know what it's like to be tall, but I'm tall, but I found out, and after trying to train really, really hard and do all the volume and add more volume, that I hit this plateau. Everybody at the Olympic and national team level, they're all really, really fit. And so it was hard to play the game of fitness, especially with people that have like these like dragon lungs and whale hearts, just, physiological freaks. So then I was looking for something that everybody else was not doing. And I was also looking to find something that would help me stay healthy. Because I just love to break ribs. That was my every 6 to 8 months, I broke had another stress fracture in a rib. And I just thought it was normal until I met my mentor, Starrett, who he started in the very early ages of CrossFit and he was actually in physical therapy school at the time. And he was like, no, this is not normal. And you don't have a butt and you don't know how to move. You don't even know how to squat. I don't know how you are even rowing or alive or upright at this point in time. And so he basically humbled me to the nth degree. And I had to start from the very bottom of learning how to air squat, learning how to do a push-up, learning how to figure out how to do a pull-up. And pretty much those foundational movements changed the way I rowed. I wouldn't say they made me taller, but they definitely made me stronger and able to use my own body weight and learn how to control my body weight and use it to get myself to go faster on the erg and on the water.
I love it. One follow-up question, and then I'm going to kick it over to Kylie. So I love that you mentioned that you went back to kind of just foundational movements, and a lot of them were body weight. How key was that, just, looking back now and starting from the very beginning and working on pure body weight foundational movements?
Yeah, I think that actually, I thought in the beginning it was like, oh, this, CrossFit thing is great. You just lift heavy weights and you just go fast, go hard. And I think I had a different exposure. I was fortunate to have a different exposure to CrossFit. And I think this was the intention of it from the get-go, was functional movement. Like, learn how to functionally move first, and then you can add weight and intensity. And so the message got distorted because, it's no fun watching people do air squats. It's really fun watching people lift like 500 pounds overhead. But fortunately, that's where I started. It was like, you have no business lifting a heavy weight unless you can make this shape. If you can't make this shape with no weight, and it's actually in the Talent Code, the great book by Daniel Coyle, he was talking about that with a bunch of the tennis players, as they I think it was tennis players, and there was also like a hotbed of talent in China for Olympic weightlifters. They don't even let them have a bar, much less a PVC pipe, until they can actually do the movement correctly, unless they can do the air movement correctly. So I'm just super fortunate that I got that exposure to the fundamentals of these foundational shapes and movements that CrossFit, once upon a time really rested their being on. So
awesome. So Kylie, I'm going to kick it over to you, because right now you are doing a ton of excellent work with a lot of junior rowers. So why don't you kind of build upon that and talk in the performance pillar of some of how you're addressing that with some of your athletes?
So it's actually very similar to like what Erin's experience was, of dialing it back to the basics and having them understand basic movement patterns and understanding shape as well, and then putting that into what their sport is. The thing that I came across when I started training, the first time I was asked to do a strength and conditioning summer program for these kids, was how many of these kids they were like noodles. There was no other word about it. They were like noodles, and they wanted heavy weight. Teenage boys wanted heavy weight, and they just had no idea. And it was a very big challenge for me to be able to dial things back for them and teach them and show them how they can progress. And as a result, it sort of started to evolve that I then got more and more rowing students coming towards me with other different issues. Like, it got to the stage that, okay, we've got their movement patterns going and they're getting stronger and they're getting more confident, but then it was coming down to their mindset, and they were having anxiety issues and they were stressing out. And these kids, especially that I've noticed here in the States compared to Australia, the kids here are under a hell of a lot of pressure to perform. And it was teaching these guys and girls, let's bring this back. Let's prevent our injuries, because that was the other thing, we're just previously talking about before offline, was the number of students that I've got that have come that are young students with injuries, and it comes down to not understanding basic movement mechanics and doing the mobility side of stuff and being focused and set. So for me, it sort of changed, and that's when you and I connected and started talking, and I reached out to you to get help on dissecting these students' erg techniques. And then I started seeing shapes, because I was extremely fortunate enough to have an excellent experience with CrossFit. My physical therapist pushed me into CrossFit 10 years ago now, it must be close to, and I was taught the same way you were, Erin, if you can't do a squat without weight, you don't get the weight. Then when I moved over to the States, I was fortunate enough to work under Logan Grillbridge at Deuce, and he had the same thing. But that was when, for me, I started to understand the performance aspect as well, because he introduced me into this idea of mindset and using breath in helping to control things. And then seeing how we can, and this has been the beauty for me that I've recently been told by the parents of some of the kids that I work closely with one-on-one, is these kids are now using these principles in their everyday life. Like kids, when they're going into exams, they're no longer stressed, because I've sat down with them and said, okay, so when you're going in for your 2K or your 6K test, what's your routine? Let's start creating this routine. Let's spend 5 minutes, close your eyes, visualize, breathe. And at first, they thought I was absolutely batshit crazy. One girl in particular, one girl in particular, I remember her walking into the gym 12 months ago almost now, head down, like most attractive girl in the world, like absolute beautiful girl, beautiful personality, no reason to be walking into a room with a head down, slouching over. And she just would panic, and she wouldn't panic at the start of a race. It would always be bang spot in the middle. And we had to figure out what was going on and where. And at first I said to her, I spoke to her parents and I said, listen, I've got something I want to try, and I think she's the ideal student for me. I said, but I haven't done this before, so I can't tell you what's going to happen. I said, but if you guys are open to it, I'd like to try it. And she's like, yeah, okay, cool. Told them what it was, and it was she had to, and I drawed on the principles that I had got through coach's prep with Logan, and that was we sit down, we take our action steps. So what this particular student of mine had to do was, before every session, we sat down with her journal, and she had to write down what she was going through, what her intentions of the training session was going to be. Then she would lay down by the erg for 10 minutes, close her eyes and breathe. And she had to visualize what was going to happen. So then when she came in particular at this time when she started with me was during 6K. So then it was talking her through when she started to feel, and we spent months like, okay, at this point she starts to get the anxiety kicking in, and then she can pull it back and can control it, but then it goes, and it was a slow process. And we did that, and then I started to make her not just do this journal with me, that she had to do it on the daily. And she had a set routine. She had to create a routine. No different. We see elite athletes and Olympic lifters, like they've got a very meticulous way of setting a routine up and knowing that their body is ready to do that lift and how they feel. And that's what she started to do. And this girl, I was blown away when her mum told me 6 months later she's going into her training session. And with the way anxiety and stress is and competitive girls are, I was really surprised to hear that she would walk into the boathouse, and in front of all of her friends, while her friends picked on her, she would go through this routine where she would close her eyes, lay down by the erg, and to this day she still does it. And she said to me recently that the one time she didn't do it, she stuffed up her 2K. And she's like, it's the little things. And then she explained to me then how she's applied it to her school. And whenever she did a 2K test, at the end of it, we would sit down, and it was never about what you did wrong. It was always like, so, okay, this is the result. Where do you feel that you could improve? Where did you see improvement? And we would break it down and start going through. And she's now doing that in managing her anxiety, because she's understanding what's in her control and what's not in her control. And I think when it comes to performance, it's not just the numbers that we hit, it's what we do leading into it. Like, you can be one of the strongest and fastest athletes, but if you don't have the mindset and you don't know how to use your breath to control and understand the different aspects, your emotions can get it out of control and cause you to not perform as well as you can, as well as the fact that injury is then there. Because like Rachel, this particular girl, she turned around to me the other day and she's like, Kylie, I hit this point now and my back starts to hurt. And she knows how it's going to feel, because when she goes through her warm-up, she's like, oh, this feels tight, that feels tight. When she first started with me, she didn't know what a hamstring was. She just thought tight hamstrings were normal. She now knows the difference of when they're still ridiculously tight, but she knows the difference of when, okay, I can push myself and not push myself. And I think one of the big things for, like, in the sense of this workshop is what we're talking about is how we need to have skill and mindset to give us performance. It's not just the end result, and how these kids can actually learn and feel their body and understand the movement.
Kylie, great point. I think that's a nice way to show how they're all integrated. That's why there are three pillars. From my point of view, just to kind of chime in on the performance end, I think, to me, watching any athlete, I want you to demonstrate that you have good awareness and body control.
Totally.
And knowing how to move your body in space, whether that's, more in a static position, or dynamically, but developing that good body awareness. And then, as you kind of hit some of those foundational movements like push-ups and bodyweight squats, but knowing how to hip hinge, those types of things, then we can start looking to add external load.
Totally.
I think it's a great segue into tying into the skill and the mindset. So I'm going to kick it back over to Erin and, kind of reflecting on some of what Kylie just shared. What are things that you did to get into the right mindset, and develop some of those connections between the strength and conditioning facility or the strength and conditioning realm and on the erg or in the boat?
Yeah, sure. So I actually don't want to teach people how I got to the top of the mountain. I don't think after, some processing and some reflection, sure, the result of 2 gold medals is amazing, and everybody wants to know, okay, how'd you do it so I can repeat it? But I actually think there's a better way. And as you guys were talking, I was like, oh, easy. Like, this is an easy connection. Is like, I actually became really good at disassociating from my mindset, or not mindset, but my emotions. I was able to deal with pain just by, I had I have a relationship with pain. I actually, in a sick, weird way, enjoyed it. That was how I pushed myself, harder than, was probably healthy. And I guess that is why for this next generation, I don't want it to be about controlling your emotions or stopping your emotions. And I think emotions is just such a nebulous word, but we always think of emotions as just getting angry, crying, whatever. But it's also anxiety is a powerful tool. It's a really good tool that, if you know how to direct it, it can get you off the line. It can give you extra energy. If you aren't nervous at the starting line, you should be nervous. But I think there's just this misnomer that having a lack of pain or lack of fear, is a good thing. And it's not, because those are going to actually, one, get you off the line. That's free speed. And 2, pain is going to teach you what to do and what not to do. Don't do what I did and break 5 freaking ribs. That was silly. So I guess I think for, that's kind of my message, that I want to help promote is I don't want to tell a story about what I did, because I don't actually want people to do what I did. And if I truly think, and I know that you can get gold medals in another way. I've seen it before. And in the end of the day, after you get that pot of gold, you're left with these patterns that you've ingrained. And, if you have been feeding, this wolf that's not going to serve you for the rest of your life, if you're ignoring pain and trying to stuff down emotions, well, you're going to have something coming to you after. You might have medals, but that's not gonna help you adjust to life outside. So anyhow, that's my take on it. Don't get excited.
No.
That's a very powerful message.
Exactly.
So let me go to this next point. So for some of the young athletes that may be interested in attending the workshop and thinking about sort of this next generation, what are some things that both of you want them to learn so that they have better tools to manage or address these situations when they arise?
Yeah, Kylie, go for it.
The things that I would love to see them take away is for them something that obviously in helping them, like Erin was saying, anxiety, fear, they are good things. They're not all negative things in our lives. We have such a negative aspect to it. And I think with Rachel, we've got her to understand what her anxiety is and how to use that to her advantage. So she has, it's not the best word to use, but she's managed to control it. But still can see and feel. And the other side of things that I want them to come away with is that the sport that they're doing, they're learning skills that are lifelong. Like we talk about functional movement. That's every single day movement. Things like getting up off a chair, picking up our groceries, carrying our groceries. Like we have movements like the deadlift, farmer's carries, things like that, which relate back to everyday movement. And the big thing that I want to see these kids come away with is I want to see them be better at their sport, definitely, and move better and feel better, but also see how they can use these skills and tools outside of their sport to help them through life as well.
I love that. I would totally just add on to that because I think I want similar things, and I want them to have range. I want them to not just know how to go hard. I think that's a skill you have to practice. But I also think you need to build up the skill of when it's time to work on skill, when it's time to be conscious of how does this feel, not just completely shutting down all sense of feeling so you can get through pain. Like that's great. It'll get you so far. And then, there's other days where you need to learn the skill of recovery, right? You need to learn the skill of technique. And I remember going in and I was like, oh, you're either gonna, you can only be one dimensional, like I like prided myself on just being able to go hard and go through a brick wall. And then I had, one of my teammates who was actually on the opposite end of the boat, Karen Davies, who was just like this skill master, like she knew how to go hard, but she like could go like a mother. And I think you can do both, but you have to practice it all. Kenny Kane, who's actually over at Oak Ridge Park in LA, he has this beautiful model. I think he calls it the mastery method now, but it's pretty much addressing like throughout the week, addressing these different aspects of training of like, hey, today is a recovery day. We're just going to get the blood moving. Nope. Today is competition day. We are going to show up, perform no matter what. Another day is mental toughness. Like, hey, we're going to do like 10 by 2K. See, you're probably not going to feel great. And it's all, but I think honestly with rowers, that's the problem is every day is mental toughness day. And then of course, the fourth day, that it goes into rotation is skill. And I think there's actually for he addresses this model. I think he still works with some elite athletes, but for the most part, this is a very healthy, like continuous model that you can take throughout your life. And instead of just using it, mental toughness day, every day, that'll help you perform. And then it's not sustainable throughout your life. Like, you're going to burn out. So
it's funny you say that. Only last night with one of my students, I was in the middle of training and she turned around and she's like, oh, this is hurting. And I was like, okay, cool, let's stop. And she just looked at me and she goes, what do you mean? And I'm like, today's not the day. I said, you just don't have it today. That's it. We need to dial it back. We need to change it. I said, the workout, the purpose of it was we were to achieve X, Y, and Z. It was this style of a training session today, and we can't do it. So that's okay. And she just was like, but I have to train. I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
It's, it can become addicting. Like, through pain, like it gives you some sense of like pride, and that's great. Those you do need to practice that every now and again, not every day.
But dialing back is a skill in itself to master.
Yeah.
And that becomes, and like that's the thing, like we have with Strong First, strength has a greater purpose. And sometimes that strength is your mental strength and the ability to actually dial things down as opposed to just pushing through, and then learning from those lessons that we can carry it on.
Totally. Love it.
So I love that both of you sort of looked at the entire framework of training and these various skills of being able to have mental toughness and push through when you need to push through, but on the flip side, recognizing and listening to internal cues and feedback from your body when it's time to go easier and make recovery a priority, because that's when you adapt. That's when you get better. That's when you get faster or stronger, is allowing your body that time to regenerate. And there was kind of two words that jumped out at me from both of you, and it was lifelong and sustainable. And I think for me, what we're trying to put together here for some of these younger athletes that would be attending the workshop is providing them tools with, things that are going to help you on the performance end, but these are things that you can use and come back to for the rest of your life and within the sport. And it doesn't necessarily have to be for rowing, but we'll be focusing on that, but also in life, in work, in relationships, when you have tough times. These are tools that you can come back to and use to help get you through the highs and the lows. So for me, I'm very excited about the workshop, to be working with both of you and being able to kind of share the knowledge, I think, that we've all sort of accumulated and turn it around and share it back to the next generation.
Yeah. Let me just one more plug in there. So I think that this workshop probably doesn't seem super sexy because it's new. Obviously, everything new. It's scary, and it's Betty, who's from Marin Rowing, and they just won, junior nationals, isn't doing it. But don't do what Betty's doing, because you're only going to be second best to her. Do something different. Do something that was, if I could encourage people to do something that I did, that helped me, get a competitive advantage, is not doing what everybody else is doing. Don't go to another rowing camp. Go to a rowing camp. I'm totally for that. And do something a little bit different to just get your competitive advantage. That you don't play the same game everybody else is playing, because you're only going to be second best. So that's my
Love it. Yeah, we'll definitely be spending some time that weekend working on things from the neck up, so to speak, and what's in between your ears. So I'm looking forward to teaching, but also having the opportunity to learn from both of you. So Kylie, do you have anything to add?
I think you guys both summed it up very well, and I'm extremely excited and feeling very fortunate to be able to work with the two of you and touch as many of our next generation as we can. And let's hope that this is just the beginning of new things.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks. Thank you.
We'll sign off, and we'll get this one out to the masses.
Thanks for listening to the Leo Training Podcast. Subscribe and get even more expert training tips at www.leotraining.io.